Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another conversation with Mojo AI, talking about different safety topics, inviting some safety pros to give us some insights into how they do their job, how their careers started, how they got to where they're at now, and help provide some insights into running better safety programs. Today, we have with us Brian Camper, International Man of Safety. Brian, would you mind just giving us a quick introduction?
Yeah, hey, thanks for that, Jeff. And when you said safety pros, I was like looking around. I was like, well, does he have someone else coming on the show? 'Cause surely it's not me. Um, no, in all sincerity, so I've been in the health and safety uh, aspect of the oil and gas industry for like the last 20 years. Luckily enough, it's taken me just about to every corner of the world, and it's been a ride. But I started out in the industry as low as you could be. For $4.50 an hour, and I've managed to climb to where if it was an ExxonMobil project, I was the health and safety representative for ExxonMobil on the entire project. So it's been really awesome, and I'm really excited about having this conversation with you.
Great, great. Happy to have you here and get some of your insights. Today, I'd like to talk specifically about safety meetings. I know that's something. It's a common practice in safety programs, but a lot of people struggle to do it well, to come up with ideas for topics, how to make it engaging, how to make it memorable and effective. So, one of the questions I get a lot or hear from other safety pros, in online forums and events and other things is, they kind of struggle to come up with ideas that are going to be good. So a lot of times they end up with things that are like irrelevant or people kind of roll their eyes at. So, in your experience, what's a good method for picking good topics for safety meetings?
Honestly, for me, and by the way, why we talk about this, a safety meeting is something that you can either win your workforce over or you could lose them. And you're 100% right when you're saying that people will just roll their eyes. For me, what's really been important on topics is one, looking at what's relevant, right? What's relevant to my workforce? What's relevant to our projects that either we just completed or that we have upcoming? But also, there is some entertainment side to that. There's entertainment, E&E, I call it entertainment and education. And you want to balance those two out. You want to find something that we can have fun talking about, and maybe others have experience where you get that third E, right? So entertainment, education, and experience, and you get that conversational to go back and forth. But for me, it's really sticking relevant to the project that either you're working on or the upcoming project, or based off of the indicators, right? Whether the leading or lagging indicators. I don't like to go too far down a rabbit hole and pick a topic that we're not working on, right? Because that's when you do get the eye rolls.
Yeah. Yeah, and one question I forgot to ask is, there's different types of safety meetings in a typical safety program. Can you clarify, like, what some of those different types of meetings are, and then which ones, we're talking about specifically today?
Yeah, so safety meetings can be anything from your toolbox meetings, your tailgate meetings, your pre-work huddles, your safety committee meetings even fall under a meeting function, right?
Hmm.
What we're going to focus on here today is your monthly safety meeting, and your monthly safety meeting is your I hate to say it this way, but it's your formal safety meeting, right? You get everyone there. You try to get as much attendance as possible. You really want to hit the points. You want that cooperation between operations, safety, production, whatever the different departments might be. And it's really a come together of the entire workforce to discuss safety in the organization along with safety and operations.
Right, and that's a good point. Bringing multiple departments together to get everybody involved and on the same page.
It, it's a must.
Yeah. So once you've got your topic figured out and planned, how do you kind of prepare for your presentation? What do you like to include? How do you like to run the meeting?
Well, for me, I found it really important to keep visuals in it, right? You don't need to make it a movie. You don't need to make it a psychedelic experience with pictures and just bright colors everywhere. But if you're going to talk at someone for 20 minutes, you're going to lose them, right? So I like to really take the indicators that we're looking for, whether they're the leading indicators that show the positive or proactive approach that we're having, break them down into relevant subsections, and put a nice visual presentation up there of those. Even on the lagging ones, the ones that we need to work on, the reactive indicators, we still have to talk about them, right? We still have to know where we came from to know where we're going as far as this meeting goes. And then as far as topics and integration and the way it's kind of all structured, it's really working with the other departments as well, like transportation, operations, um, asking them what they have as well, right? Because it can't just be the safety department trying to plan all this out, right? You need to really integrate your meetings with the other departments, make it organizational, top to bottom, and that way you can talk about what they're going to present. They can talk, everything integrates and turns into a proactive and a productive meeting for everyone.
Sure. Sure. In your experience, what's like a good and appropriate length for this type of monthly safety meeting?
With a good Q&A, that 30 to 45 minutes, I think, is a really good um, length. You don't want to go too far. I've seen them go an hour, right? And they could go an hour really easily. But that 30 to 45 minutes with a good presentation from, the health and safety side, maybe from operations, as well as peer review, or some peer sharing, someone from the workforce, a little bit of competitiveness games, maybe some little bit of challenges or quiz or something, and as well as some recognition, monthly recognition of the workforce. um, that 30 to 45 minutes is a really solid time, I think.
Okay. That's a good idea. And do you typically like to have these in the morning, midday, end of day? Is there a time that you find works better, or is that really dependent on the organization?
So you kind of hit the nail on the head there. You kind of took the answer there. For me, in the oil and gas industry, it was always in the morning, right? Even though we work 24 hours, in the morning is the time where you could catch either the shift coming off, and you could do one for them, which would be at the end of their night, or you could do one for the shift coming on, right? So you kind of catch both shifts, because on a drilling rig we're 24 hours, it never shuts down while we're drilling. But say in an organization where you're a manufacturer, early in the morning, before shift, or at the start of shift, that's when I see it being the most effective, because then it gives them time to kind of let it brew throughout the day. If you try to do it after their shift,
Mhm.
not saying that everyone's going to have a bad day, but what if someone has a bad day and all that's on their mind is getting out of there and getting to the kids' baseball practice or whatever it might be. So I've always found pre-shift is, our starter shift is really the most effective.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I want to dig a little deeper on a few things that you just mentioned. Getting feedback during the event and kind of engaging the audience. How do you like to go about that?
So I'll plant little Easter eggs in my presentation, whether it be something like IDLH of H2S, if we're talking about toxicity of gases or gas monitoring. And as I read off or educate on what the IDLH of H2S is, I'll give it a bit of time. I'll give it time to stew, and then I'll revisit that, and I'll pick someone randomly. I'll be like, "Hey Jeff, do you remember what the IDLH of H2S is?" And if you answer the question correctly, I tend to have jerky or candy or some bomber sunglasses or something like that, and toss it out there, a little, maybe a $10 Starbucks gift card. And it's not to bribe them to pay attention, but when they see that and they see those little Easter eggs, and they kind of know what maybe you might come back to, people do pay attention a little bit more. They're a little more on the edge of their seat, and they're like, "Come on, call me," and you get that interaction back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I don't think anybody's too old for candy or gift cards. I'm not
No,
anyway.
no, no. I know you're not.
Thanks. What about introducing some kind of competition into it?
Yeah, so that's kind of going back to the leading KPIs, such as maybe something that has to do with your driver monitoring scoring, like if you're using a Samsara system or fleet telemetrics or whatever it is that you might be using. Observations completed within Safety Mojo or something along those lines in your goals and controls. You can really put those up there, break them down by departments,
Hmm.
and make it a competition. And when they see their name up there on the big projector screen and on a slide, or they see their department, that the manufacturing department has 20 more observations than administration or than production. You kind of get these competitions going and you get people paying attention, and you'll even in the crowd you'll get a little bit of ribbon going back and forth, like, oh, look at that, we're smoking you guys or this and that. And it does breed, it opens up that conversation, right? It opens up that interaction. And that's something that I feel more so than anything, more important than any topics. And I know I'm kind of running off at the point here, like a good safety guy does, but more important than any topics or anything that's on the PowerPoint, the most important thing in a safety meeting is getting that interaction, right? Getting it to go both ways, whether it's in the crowd as well, and have it coming up to the presenter and going from the presenter back and forth. That's
Hmm.
once you get that, you've got a successful safety meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing you've mentioned to me in the past that you like to do is something called, a safety minute where you'll call on somebody
Oh yeah.
in the audience. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so I've been doing this throughout my career, and it's actually the reason why I number my sign-in sheets. Well, now we're getting away from those; it's all digital nowadays. But in the past, when you pass around the sign-in sheet and everyone signs their name, while I'm making that sheet in Excel or whatever, I always number them on the side. So if I have 100 guys on the crew, I got 120 places to sign, and as they'll go through and sign, they write their name by a number, right? Kind of just randomly wherever they're sitting, and it goes through. And so one of my favorite things to do is to take that sign-in sheet about halfway through the meeting. I'll take it and I'll call on someone like Sam who's sitting on the other side of you, and I'll say, Sam, give me a number between 1 and 100, and say he picks number 50, and you happen to be signed on number 50.
Hmm.
I'll call on you and say, Jeff, congratulations, you're our safety minute of the month. Can you please stand up and give us a safety minute from your experience this month, whether it be an observation, whether it be something that you experienced this month, or maybe one of our new campaigns, what it's meant to you on the floor, and what safeties look like for you for this month. And honestly, it's really cool. It's something that it keeps a lot of participation, and as a byproduct of it, again, you're getting that interaction. I've noticed people start paying attention to where they sign on the sign in sheet and where other people are signing on the sign in sheet. So that just in case I call on you as Jeff to pick the number, you know exactly where Sam's name is on that list. And you got Sam standing up in front of everyone to give the safety minute.
I like that idea.
Yeah, it's just a fun little thing. And because it's random, it's kind of it's a little more interactive, and it's a little more raw, and it's a little more less thought out, and you honestly, there's been several of those that we got a really good finger on the pulse of our safety campaign by that safety minute. And it wasn't always meant that it was working really great. Sometimes it meant like, oh, we actually have a lot of work to do, so there is some rawness to it, which makes it even better.
Yeah. Okay. We've talked about a few tips for running better safety meetings. Can you think of a couple big don'ts that you've experienced or seen, or something that will just ruin a safety meeting right away?
Yeah, so, and I've done all these, by the way, which is, I'm going to talk from very a wealth of experience with how to ruin a safety meeting, much like I'm ruining this interview. I'm kidding. Um, Talking at people and just reading off of your PowerPoint, right? You will lose everybody in the room within minutes. They'll be checked out. Even if they're looking at you, it doesn't mean they're listening to you at that point, right? You really have to make it conversational. What's up there on your presentation? It needs to be visual, like we talked about, right? I'm not saying it needs to be, just picture perfect, but it needs to be visual. It needs to be very summarized of what you're speaking about, right? And whatever you're speaking about at that time needs to match what's up there, right? If you want to skip a slide or get ahead, that's fine, but you need to kind of be on the same page with what's on your presentation. Um, Relevant topics. We talked about that in the very beginning. If we're moving a drill rig from pad A and moving it to pad B, and it's the middle of summer, and I want to talk to you about working in cold weather, what are we doing? Right? I'm wasting your guys' time. So making sure like we to revisit that it's a relevant topic to what we're talking about and what we're doing there on the ground. Having it just be, there's no such thing. We're gonna call them a safety meeting, right? And it might be the monthly safety meeting, but that's not my meeting, right? Me as a safety director, that's not my meeting. This is the organizational meeting. This is for all of us in the project. So making sure that you have other speakers, having one person standing up there just talking about everything is another way to lose the audience, right? You need to switch those faces out, and as well as those communication styles, right? So those are kind of my big three that how you can completely ruin a safety meeting, right? Just talking at people, not having a diverse um, set of presenters or maybe of speakers, and just having topics that don't have anything to do with the price of tea in China. I knew I was going to throw that one in there.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And by having other people in the company from other departments participate in this, it sounds like that's kind of an easy way to show that, hey, the organization is on board with safety, like across the board. It's not just let's go listen to the safety guy.
No.
It's like, hey, my boss is up there talking to me about this too.
Yeah, exactly. And really making it to where you're driving it to be back and forth conversation between the presenters and the workforce, right? Whether it be your production crew, your drilling crew, whatever workforce you have, right? You will really want to make sure that you're driving it back and forth. And because if you're just standing up there, and even if you have a guy from operations or a gal from operations and you have myself, but it's just information flowing from one way, again, you've lost the safety meeting.
Sure. Okay. Um, I didn't intend for this conversation to be promotional at all, but I do want to ask you a little bit about, like in your experience, how has Safety Mojo helped you run better safety meetings?
Okay, so again, for lack of just promoting Safety Mojo, but I will say that the awesome part about using Safety Mojo for making your safety meetings better or even more transparent as well, and is how much more digestible they can be, and how they can be digested at a later time. Also, you know, a safety meeting, especially a monthly safety meeting, this is something that we haven't talked about yet. We're talking about a huge investment. If I have 150 people on my drill site or my rig site, and say I pay them, you know, 30, 40 bucks an hour, right? And they're there for an hour and a half, but by the time they clock in, get to the safety meeting, we hold that safety meeting, and then, everyone grabs their burrito or whatever. And then by the time they actually get to working, that's 300 man hours, you know, that are ate by the company. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a big investment. So where I'm going with this and Safety Mojo is if for some reason there's a critical part of the operation that's not able to shut down and be able to be in attendance of the safety meeting, having that Mojo app and having that safety meeting available on Mojo is huge, right? Where it's not like, oh well, hey, what did they talk about? Or here's sign. they get all the full information. They get everything that you talked about. They could get the video of the meeting, and for me, that's huge. That's the biggest part about it with me with running safety meetings with Safety Mojo.
Yeah, and going back to one of the first things you talked about around choosing topics for the meeting, identifying leading indicators, lagging indicators. Has that been pretty easy to do with Safety Mojo's like dashboards and reporting capabilities?
100%. So, depending on how you get your dashboard set up, as soon as you click in at any certain level, supervisors, superintendents, safety managers, directors, um, you really get a snapshot of your entire safety culture, right? And how it's working with operations. So choosing what you're going to base those topics off of, what you're going to base your indicator slides and kind of your projections of where your campaigns are going, it's right there in front of you. You're not rooting around trying to find, well, how many observations were done, how many inspections were done, what does our JSA quality look like. It's all right there in front of you, and it gives you time to focus on the actual topics of the safety meeting and the presentation portion of it.
Yeah, well, that's great. Okay, I'd like to ask you a few additional, just kind of quick questions here at the end of our conversation. Um, Over the course of your career, how many safety meetings do you think you've run?
Oh man, successfully or unsuccessfully?
Both.
Oh, um, it's in the thousands. To be
Oh,
honest with you,
wow.
Jeff. It's in the thousands. And I've held safety meetings with 3 people, and I've held safety meetings with 400 people. I've held safety meetings in 9 different languages, and in some languages that I didn't even speak. Oddly enough, some of those were in southern Louisiana, where supposedly it's English, but I had no idea. Right? Cajun is definitely a language of its own to master, but it's in the thousands. And the biggest thing that I take away from every safety meeting that I participate in, or that I lead, or that I organize, is at the end of that meeting, no matter how long or how brief it may be, that someone walks away from there with at least more knowledge than they walked in with, and that it helps them work throughout their day and the rest of their career even just a little bit safer, right? Or make a better choice that prevents them from getting hurt or hurting someone else. And as long as you're doing that, and you're able to achieve that, and you feel that you've passed that message along, that's a successful safety meeting.
Yeah, I like that. Um, we've talked about some of the different names for these meetings, like standard safety meeting, you can do tailgate meeting, toolbox talk, you know, and I know the oil field, is a rough crowd. Like, have you ever come across like any more colorful names for a safety meeting?
Oh yeah, I've come across quite a few of them, but I believe we're not trying to make this an R-rated podcast, so I'll keep those ones to myself. But yeah, there have been some very colorful names. Yeah, none of them that I could actually say, but yeah, the oil field is a bit rough, and even when they first get, I'm gonna be honest with you, Jeff, even when they first get into these safety meetings, sometimes um, you got to win the crowd over first before you even, it's kind of like in the scene of Roadhouse where the band's playing behind the chicken mesh,
Yeah.
right? There's a little bit of truth to that in some point, even being the safety guy up in some of these places, such as some places in the South and whatnot. But no, honestly, something too that we talked about with safety meetings, and I'm going to divert your question here for a second, just real quick. And we're talking about the rough crowds. It's not bribing them, but in organizing a safety meeting as well, you got to take some creature comfort into consideration. Um, it's very important, especially if it's an early morning safety meeting, because they're getting up even early to get there, right? They're sitting there, they're in the conference room, training room, maybe outside on site, whatever it is. One thing that's been really important for me for these safety meetings, and it's made it really go successful. Burritos, sausages, donuts, pastries, coffee, whatever it might be, take their creature comforts into consideration and have that there for them. So where it's kind of like, okay, we got you here, and we're gonna talk about safety, and we're gonna talk about some either some really fun things, but also some things that are uncomfortable. Whether we need to address some lagging indicators, but here you go. Here's something to make you feel better. Here's a carne asada breakfast burrito. But that's got to be high up there on the list too for a successful safety meeting.
Yeah. Okay. In your experience, what are like some of the top challenges in holding an effective safety meeting? And that's kind of a broad question, so feel free to give a couple of examples.
For me, when the quickest ways I've seen it kind of go off and lose the audience is, again, talking at them and not being conversational. A safety meeting, especially a monthly safety meeting, whether it's a tailgate meeting, a toolbox meeting, and we've talked about those, even a JSA is a safety meeting in reality, right?
Hmm.
But if you're holding a monthly safety meeting, you can't conversate with every single person in the crowd, but it definitely needs to be back and forth, right? It needs to be some conversational pieces, much like you and I are having here, right? There needs to be some rapport built up during that safety meeting. If there's not, and it like you've heard me say talking at now a few times, if you're just standing up there talking at people, you will lose the meeting every time. There'll be butts in the seats, but nothing's going on up here, right? It's just in and out, and that's it. Um, Also, just being ill prepared, not having a presentation, not having the correct stats, a relevant topic, or like I talked about, even donuts and coffee, or burritos, or whatever it might be. Showing lack of effort, you'll lose the safety meeting.
Yeah. Have you ever implemented any kind of process or program about like gathering feedback from the crews after a meeting to maybe help improve over time?
Yeah, so I found it really important that after the safety meeting, you have a true Q&A session as well to talk about either the topics that you talked about or what's going on, but also to get that feedback. As far as formalizing it, yes, we have had systems in the past, and you could again we could do this with goals and controls. Again, not to plug Safety Mojo, but within Safety Mojo, you know, you could have the ability to give feedback on that safety meeting, right? The topics, on the presentation, on whatever it might be, and you could actually see that in real time and kind of pick your analytics on, hey, that safety meeting was on point, or you know what, we need to work on this a little bit more. But um, using a tool such as Safety Mojo would definitely give you a much more powerful way to formalize that process to where you can tailor your safety meetings a little more to your exact workforce, better than just giving them a card that says, here, scale me 1 to 5.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you for spending some time with us. As always, this is a lot of, really great information that I think can help other safety pros out there, pull some tips and tricks from to help improve their own safety programs.
Yeah, and there's some out there that put on amazing safety meetings that they're like rock shows compared to mine. I feel like I put on a really good one, and there's you know in this general discussion and back and forth, there's definitely some good knowledge here, and there's definitely some good experiences here. Um, More than anything, for any safety pros that might be watching this, or sending this to their operations team, it's got to be about that communication going back and forth, right? It's got to be respecting their time of your workforce, being diligent about your topics, making it conversational, and the creature comforts, right? And bringing in some competition, right? Like we talked about, we touched on it a little bit there, but was it whether it's a quiz app, a visual of how they're scoring in their cross audits or whatever it might be, getting that competition going on too. Those are all keys to making these safety meetings successful and interactive.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Brian. I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, same here. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Sam. And you guys have a nice day there in Utah. And I'm going to go out and enjoy the lake here this evening. And goodbye from Missouri.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Cheers. Bye.